Alrighty, so for you guys today, I have my week 6 running back rankings and tiers. Couple of things to note and knock out of the way. These videos are pre-recorded earlier in the week, so if you're seeing them later in the week, do not judge me if players end up playing who I didn't think were going to play, or players end up not playing who I did not know were not going to play earlier in the week. Just so you guys know that I'm not absolutely crazy, I'm taking film, stats, and projections that I have made up for myself. Obviously, the film is coming from what I'm watching, stats are coming from actual like ESPN or Google, and then the projections are my own. But I am taking all that into account to make these rankings. I'm not just like throwing stuff out into the ether. So just be aware, like, you may not love them and they may not always be 100% accurate because nobody's going to have like the crystal ball, but I'm not crazy. These are decently on point week over week over week. There will be some people that are completely correct, some people that I'm a little off on, and some people that I'm like, oh, didn't know you were going to have the best week of all time. Vis-a-vis Rico Dowdle. I thought he was going to be more of a middling RB2 last week without Chuba Hubbard playing, and he ended up being the number 1 RB on the week. So you got to like give and take a little bit, but you still would have started him if you would have listened to the video last week. Without further ado, we're going to hop into my week 6 RB tiers and rankings right now. So at RB number 1, I do have Christian McCaffrey going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week. Should be a super high scoring game. The Bucs are not letting you run the ball very effectively, but I don't know how many pass catchers will be out there for the 49ers this week. It should set it up where CMC is still overly involved through the air. Touchdown equity, target equity, number 1 running back on this football team, probably the best running back right now, like in fantasy football. CMC, absolute smash in week 6. At number 2, Josh Jacobs going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals right now have one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. They cannot stop running backs running the football. They can't stop the pass. This game doesn't really have to be super high scoring because Joe Flacco coming over, I really don't think is going to change too much in week 6. First week, short week, figuring out the playbook, figuring out the players, figuring out timing. I really don't think they're going to be able to score very many points against a good Green Bay Packers defense. Josh Jacobs coming off a bye, 100% healthy, ready to go and to rumble. They will probably be blowing out the Bengals in the second half. Josh Jacobs, lots of carries in the second half. He's going to smash in week 6. At number 3, I have Bijan Robinson, who's going up against the Bills. The Bills are still bottom 10 in rush yards allowed to running back specifically. Bijan Robinson also coming off a bye week, so they should have a game plan coming out of the bye week for them to just exploit them on the offensive side of the football. The only concern I have for this matchup is that the Bills score a lot of points, obviously, so that is good for Bijan, but it's also negative because if they get way ahead, he's still involved in the passing game, obviously, which is great, but they might not have to run the ball as much because they're in more of a pass game script, so it's one thing to monitor in week 6, but still confidently a top 5 guy this coming week. At number 4, I do have Devon Achane. Past few weeks for the Chargers, they have been giving up a lot of like ground yards to running backs. It's kind of like contrary to what we saw in the first handful of weeks. It's a very interesting situation. Devon Achane is either going to be able to run the football, catch the football. He's explosive in both facets of the game. I think this could be a week where he's able to get there on the ground and through the air. Easily a top 5 guy for me in week 6. At number 5, I have Jonathan Taylor going up against the Cardinals. I know some people are like, oh, this is so low. I really don't think so. The Cardinals are not going to allow you to run all that effectively on the ground. They're still doing pretty good. They're a top 10-ish team in rush yards allowed to the running back position right now, so they're not just letting you run all over them. It's not going to be the high scoring of the game, so that part does help out Jonathan Taylor. He's looked fantastic on the season as well. Like, this whole Colts offense is like clicking, so safely inside of a top 10 running back in week 6. At RB6, I do have James Cook going up against the Falcons. This game could be potentially higher scoring. It does set it up where James Cook is going to be able to smash. The Falcons are not letting you get there like crazy high on the ground, but they're letting you get there in general with points scored, yards allowed. It's not the best situation for the Falcons going up against the Bills this week. He should be in a fine spot to bounce back in week 6. At RB7, it's Javonte Williams going up against the Panthers. Panthers defense in general sucks. He has a lot of touchdown equity. He has target equity. He's pretty much just absolutely smashing this season because of how bad the Panthers defense is and how high scoring this game could be because of how bad both of these defenses are. I have him still pretty high, like a middling RB1 again, like I had him in week 5. At running back 8, I do have Jahmyr Gibbs. It's a lot lower than I've had him pretty much any time on the season. More of a matchup situation between the Lions and the Chiefs. Chiefs are not letting you run the ball too effectively on them, pretty much like what we saw last year in 2024. Gibbs is still involved through the air. He's still an explosive running back, so it's not going to matter too much. He should still finish as an RB1 on the week. At RB9, I do have Kyren Williams going up against the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens defense is horrible. Lamar Jackson's probably not going to end up playing. They should set up as a lower scoring game because of that. That should mean that for Kyren Williams and the Rams, they can run the football a lot more in the second half. He has touchdown equity, goal line carry equity, target equity. Like Kyren Williams looks fantastic this year, even with like the reduced workload. It's like he's a little bit more efficient on his runs. At RB10, I do have Ashton Jeanty going up against Tennessee Titans. Right now, the Titans are bottom 5 in rush yards allowed to the running back position. They are getting ran all over. It's not even close. Jeanty, it's so funny because in week 4, I bumped him up because of the matchup. In week 5 against the Colts, I bumped him down because of the matchup. It really is going to take more matchup dependent situations for Jeanty to absolutely smash. Unfortunately for the Titans, their defensive line is absolutely horrible. They cannot stop the run. That is going to set it up where Jeanty should absolutely pop off and smash this week. At RB11, I do have Saquon Barkley going up against the Giants. You know, people out there like, oh, a lot of projected rushing yards and At some point in time, we have to look at the tape and be like, you know what? Like, I respect you, but like, I have to move you down. And I've been slowly moving Saquon down, and this is the point in time where I'm like taking my stand and saying like, hey, dude, you're not getting it done. You haven't been playing like a true RB1 on the season, and like, I have to start bumping you farther and farther down until you show me something on tape where I'm like, yeah, that guy's the guy. Again, I could look like an idiot, you know, in this video post, and I'm like, oh, this guy's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But he just hasn't looked great. I have to move him down. I have to adjust it accordingly. So until the tape looks better for him in this offensive line for the Eagles, I'm going to still have him right now this week as an RB1. It's kind of hard to take him outside of an RB1 because he can pop up any given week. But I just don't love what I've seen so far through the first 5 weeks for Saquon Barkley or this Eagles offense. At RB12, I do have Rico Dowdle going up against the Cowboys. It's funny what happened last week, but it really doesn't matter. The point is, Rico Dowdle looked great. Didn't think he was going to look that great, but I did think he would look good, obviously, because I had him ranked, like I said earlier, as an RB2, as a high-end RB2, actually. So neither here nor there. The point is, this week, he's getting his revenge game against the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think Chuba Hubbard's going to play. Like I said earlier at the beginning of the video, too, if Chuba Hubbard does play, then you got to move Rico Dowdle down. Chuba Hubbard has to come into the rankings. He probably is more of a low-end RB2, as is Chuba Hubbard, because we just don't know what the split's going to look like. If Rico Dowdle is the only one playing for the Panthers in the running back room this week, he's going to get a lot of carries, goal line carries. He has a little bit of target equity. This game could end up completely blowing open against the Dallas Cowboys, which could set it up where like he is just RB, I don't know, 5, 6, 2, whatever. Who knows? At RB13, I do have Cam Skattebo going up against the Eagles. Secretly, low-key, the Eagles' like run defense has really not been all that fantastic. It's been more of a middling run defense. So we'll see how he looks. It's a rivalry game, I guess, between the Eagles and the Giants. So it could end up being where he, you know, finishes really, really low. But I'm going to have him here as a high-end RB2 in week 6. At RB14, I know this is going to be kind of a, you know, scary ranking. I do have Ja'Cory Cross-Garrett, Bill, JCM going up against the Bears. This should be one of the higher scoring games on the week. Does not mean that one side is blowing out the other side, but it should just be a really high scoring game. The Chicago Bears have a horrible defense right now. They have a lot of injuries. They're coming off a bye, so they should be ready to put up some points against the Commanders vis-a-vis like high scoring game. I'm hopeful that we get a version of week 5 where he's efficient on the ground, involved in the passing game. He's getting a lot more snaps, whether it's 40% like we saw in week 5, 50% would be great. I would love to see that like snap share for him. If that's what we end up seeing, I think he's an absolute smash play. At RB15, I do have Quinshon Judkins going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's going to be a lower scoring game, defensive battle, running the football. That should set it up where Quinshon Judkins is overly involved. With Dylan Gabriel out there, it should be a little bit more of an explosive offense, which I like as well. Quinshon Judkins has looked really good on the season. So like all these things are kind of setting up positively for him. The Steelers are still letting you get there on the ground to a certain extent. They're not like super crazy high, but they're not super crazy low, kind of in the middle. I feel pretty confident here having him at RB15 on the week. At RB16, I do have Rachaad White going up against the 49ers. Bucky Irving, in my opinion, is probably not going to play this week. I think this game could be higher scoring. Rachaad White is involved in the passing game. The Bucs have looked fantastic on offense. He's going to be involved running the football, catching the football, touchdown equity, probably goal line carry equity for this football team as well. I do like Rachaad White and this higher scoring matchup against the 49ers in week 6. At RB17, I do have J.K. Dobbins going up against the New York Jets this week. Jets run defense, horrible. Jets pass defense, horrible. I don't like that it's a London game, but it should end up being a lower scoring game for the Jets because they're going up against a top 10, top 5 defense in the Denver Broncos. That should mean that in the second half, J.K. Dobbins is able to get a lot of carries. The most annoying thing about J.K. Dobbins is that he can get a lot of carries and get a lot of yards, but his touchdown equity is like So I don't absolutely love that situation for him. I do like the matchup though. It should end up setting up where he finishes as like a middling RB2, like I have him right here in week 6. At RB18, I do have Travis Etienne going up against the Seahawks. I hate this matchup. Seahawks are like number 1 right now in running back yards allowed for the past 3 games. It is not a great situation for Travis Etienne. If I am the Seahawks, I am like, we're going to take away Etienne and the running game, which means that there is no play action pass for Trevor Lawrence, and he looks like crap like he did in week 5 against the Chiefs. He can always break an explosive run. It is possible even against this great Seahawks run defense. Could be a higher scoring game like we saw last week with the Seahawks and the Bucks. Don't really know what we're actually going to see out of this football game, like holistically speaking. So I want to have him safely inside of like a middling RB2 range for week 6. At RB19, I do have Michael Carter going up against the Colts. The Colts are letting you run the football decently effectively. Should be a higher scoring game. If it's Kyler Murray who's playing, he's going to be kind of hobbled. If it's the backup quarterback, I don't really know what we're going to get out of the quarterback play for the week. After the DeMercado fumble, he really should like be like the lead running back for this football team. Either way you slice it, it should set it up where Michael Carter is absolutely able to smash this week, especially with the quarterback play being questionable from either person who ends up doing it. At RB20, I do have Derrick Henry. Him and Saquon are in the same boat. Eventually, what I see on tape is what I see on tape, and you got to go bump down. Had him as like a low end RB1 last week. I officially have to get him down into a middling RB2 rank because of the performance on the stat sheet, because of what I'm seeing on tape, and because the Rams run defense is pretty good. You're still not going to have Lamar Jackson. It's going to be Cooper Rush. They're going to know we take away the run, we win this football game. Derrick Henry's not going to be in a good spot as long as Lamar is not out there. Again, he hasn't looked good on tape pretty much the entire season. It is unfortunate to have him this low, but because of how he's looked, because of how he's performed, and also because of this Rams rush defense, I just don't think he's going to be able to get there as a high-end RB2 or even an RB1. So he's, a low-end, middling RB2 for week 6. But RB21, I do have Breece Hall going up against the Broncos. The matchup against the Broncos is my favorite. The London game isn't my favorite. Broncos run defense, though, hasn't been that fantastic on the season. I know it's kind of contrary because it's like their defense is pretty good, but their run defense hasn't been fantastic. I do think that sets it up where Breece Hall will be able to get there as like a low-end RB2 on the week. At RB22, I do have Kenneth Walker going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The point in time where Kenneth Walker scores a touchdown is the point in time where he finishes as a high-end RB2 or a low-end RB1. Until that point in time, he's more of a middling to the bottom of the barrel RB2. I did see last week what I had said before is the Jags are letting you run the football to some extent. I know that they are like right now top 5 in rush yards allowed to the running back position. It's also because they haven't gone up against a really good running back in a hot minute. That should set it up, in my opinion, where Kenneth Walker is able to smash in this game. I don't know how many points the Jags are going to be able to score against this really good Seahawks defense. So for me, this could set it up where they're able to run the football from the Seahawks perspective a lot more in the second half. Either way, Kenneth Walker, it's one of those annoying situations with Zach Charbonnet out there still playing and getting the touchdown equity for this football team when they're carrying the football. But I have him here as like a low-end RB2 in week 6. At RB23, I do have DeAndre Swift going up against the Commanders this week. Said it to you earlier, higher scoring game, bye week. I do think this sets it up where Ben Johnson has the perfect game plan. Caleb Williams looks great. You're going to see DeAndre Swift be involved in the passing game a little bit. He's going to be able to run the ball decently effectively in this matchup as well. Either way, DeAndre Swift should be somebody you should be comfortable starting in week 6. At RB24, it is Hassan Haskins or Kamani Vidal. This is like one of those weird ones. So I have 2 back-to-back weird ones. I don't know who's going to play better. I'm assuming it's going to be Hassan Haskins, but it could be Kamani Vidal. You got to go with your gut. If you think it's Hassan Haskins, if you think it's Kamani Vidal, I would run with that option. Whichever one you feel more comfortable with. The matchup against the Dolphins is fantastic. The Dolphins run defense is absolutely horrible. We saw that in week 5 with Rico Dowdle. So one of these guys or both of these guys could pop off. At RB25, and again, you could flex them into 24. It is Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson. With Gibson going down, this should set it up where one of these guys starts to emerge and get more and more carries and be a more and more dominant force. In this week's matchup against the Saints are not letting you run the ball crazy effectively, but they're letting you get there sometimes with like breakaway runs. If you want to say Ramondre has a better chance of doing that, then Ramondre is someone who could be viable as like a low end, bottom of the barrel RB2 in week 6. If you think Travion Henderson is going to start getting a shot, getting more carries, and just being kind of like worked in more and more, this could be the week that you want to start him as like a bottom of the barrel RB2 going up against a Saints team that's not going to score a lot of points. It's one of those weird things where like you could swap out the Chargers guys with the Patriots guys, vice versa. Really depends on your situation, really depends on like what you're thinking. This is another gut check for you guys in week 6 for these last like 4 running backs, I guess you would say, or last 2 spots in my like true rankings for this coming week. So real quick, going to run through the last guys I have as RB3s. Not going to touch on them too much aside from the very first one, and we'll keep going. So the first RB3 is David Montgomery. Told y'all in week 3, smash. Told you in week 4, avoid. Told you in week 5, smash. And people said I was crazy. But again, you just have to look at the matchups and look at the underlying metrics, and you have a better feeling what's going to happen. He could smash this week, and I could look, crazy again. But so far, it's been tracking with Dave Montgomery and this Lions offense when they're running the football. From there, I have Chase Brown, Tony Pollard, Jalen Warren, Alvin Kamara, Zach Charbonnet, RJ Harvey, and Isaiah Pacheco. Alvin Kamara could not end up playing. If that happens, you can swap him out with Kendre Miller. When it comes to Jalen Warren, I don't care if he doesn't play. If he doesn't play, you're not playing Kenneth Gainwell. Hear me now. Do not play Kenneth Gainwell against the Browns. The matchup is absolutely horrible. The Browns are not letting you run the football. Alrighty, so there are my week 6 RB tiers and rankings. Hopefully this video helps you get just a little bit closer to winning your fantasy football championship in 2025. I know the waiver wire is already passed. I know that some of you don't use DST, but if you are looking for some deeper league stashes for your league who have the potential to be viable in the back half of the season, you can go check out my waiver wire video below, see if anybody's still available over here. And if you're using DST and you're not sure where you want to stream in week 6, I'll have that video somewhere over here, above, not below, I guess. So you can go check that out as well. Hopefully I'll see you guys again. No, hopefully you guys will see me again real soon. And until then, y'all have a blessed day.